If Joe Biden wants to stabilize and grow America, he can take these 3 steps. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Well, it's day 1, a full day 1 of the Biden presidency, and already he's done an awful lot. I'll get into some of the details on that in a little bit. In our second hour of our program today, Dr. Richard Wolff is going to drop by. We're going to ask him what the 3 best stimulus ideas would be that Joe Biden could offer. I have some opinions, and I'll share them with you in just a moment. In our third hour, Dr. Michael Mann will be with us, the eminent, one of the world's best, arguably most famous climate scientists. He has a new book out, but he has been doing a deep dive over the last year in writing this book about who the people are who have been funding climate denialism and just this whole crisis that we have. So we'll get into that in our third hour. But I want to start out with the idea or the sad reality that America is dying. We have been dying for 40 years. Ever since the Reagan Revolution, America has been shrinking. Our role in the world has been diminishing. Our internal politics have been diminishing. Our people have been dying. Our workers have had their pay gutted. Families have been torn apart. America is dying. So where do we start putting it back together? Now, you've heard me rant about various aspects of this for years and years and years, but there's this thing called the rule of 3s. You know, typically if you read, and now that I've sensitized you to this, you will start noticing it everywhere. In news stories, in articles, in books, in everything. It's called the rule of 3s. And people will say, well, we need health care, education, and a Green New Deal. That's 3, right? I'd say, and there's a reason for the rule of 3s that all writers follow it. Many don't even realize they're following it. We even do it in conversation. And that's because it's wired into us. The average person can only hold 4 or 5, maybe at the most 7, plus or minus 2 or 3 things in their mind at one time. And the baseline, the first 2 or 3 of those things are, where am I? How do I keep sitting up straight? What's my environment? That kind of survival stuff. And so really, 3 ideas is about all most people can get their heads around in a hurry. So I respectfully offer 3 steps for Joe Biden and the Democrats in the House and Senate, now that they control both, barely but enough, right? Now that they control both, to go forward. And those are what I just said: education, healthcare, and the Green New Deal. Number 1, education. Prior to the Reagan Revolution, you could go to, pretty much anybody in the United States could go to college. Louise and I both went to college, and I didn't graduate, but I attended for a short while, and I paid for my tuition. I paid the rent on a little apartment in East Lansing. I bought my own food. I bought a car for $35 and paid the cost of all of it on a part-time job pumping gas at the Esso station on Trowbridge Road in East Lansing, Michigan, and as a dishwasher at Bob's Big Boy across the street from the gas station. That's what I did on weekends to pay my way through school. And I was also working weekends. Actually, I was working at the Esso station more often in the mornings, because at that point in time I was working in weekends as a DJ too, as a part-time DJ. But the point is, and back then the minimum wage was like $3 an hour or something like that. And Louise put herself through school as a waitress, the word of the day, at Howard Johnson's, right? You could do that. My mother graduated magna cum laude from Michigan State University back in the 1940s. She put herself through school working as a lifeguard summers in Charlevoix, Michigan, and washing and propping airplanes at the Lansing airport on weekends. She also traded that for flying lessons, which is, my mother was quite a person. Anyhow, you could do that back in the day. You can't now. Reagan he looked at education and he said, somebody should be able to make a buck off this. This is the original, this is kind of the official Republican mantra for everything. Somebody should make a buck off this. Let's turn it from being a public utility into being an industry. And as a result, we have 2 generations of young people, 40 years worth of young people. And many of them aren't young anymore. You know, some of them are in their 60s now. But we have 40 years, we have 2 generations of young people who were not able to start families early like Louise and I did. I mean, we got married, in our early I was 21 when we got married. I was 26 when we bought our first house. Young people can't do that anymore because they're saddled with student debt. They're carrying around $20, $30, $50, $100,000 worth of student debt. You can't get a loan to do that. You can't move on with life to do that. So number one, we need to do 2 things about education. Number one, we need to make college free or at least very affordable, so affordable that you can, pay your tuition with a part-time job on the weekends. And number 2, we need to rebuild our primary school education, our fundamental education. Betsy DeVos took a meat axe to this thing and to our educational system in an attempt to destroy public education and replace it with for-profit education run by other billionaires like her. And we need to fix that. So that's number one. Number 2, health care. We've got tens of thousands of Americans every year who die from lack of access to health care. We have 80 million people who are underinsured and some 40 to 50 million who are uninsured. And in fact, that number is probably much higher. The number who are, I would argue, that 100% of Americans, 340 million of us, are underinsured because we're paying absurd, initial fees, co-payments, the surprise billing. I mean, it's insane. No other developed country in the world does this. Literally none. And none of them are begging for the American healthcare system. And in the meantime, you've got CEOs like Dollar Bill McGuire over at United Healthcare taking over $1 billion with a B. His successor, Stephen Hemsley, took several $100 million. I mean, this is nuts, right? Every penny of that comes from United Healthcare or some other health insurance company saying, no, we're not going to pay for your kid's liver transplant. Sorry. And number 3, we need a Green New Deal. Our planet is dying. But but number 2, we need Medicare for all. I think that's fairly obvious. And number 3, our planet is dying. And it is costing us American lives from, wildfires, hurricanes, tornadoes, derecos, all this kind of stuff. We need to rebuild our physical infrastructure. Our educational infrastructure is our education. Our healthcare infrastructure is healthcare. This is all infrastructure, right? And our physical infrastructure, rebuild our roads, rebuild our transportation systems, electrify our cars, bring our homes up to code, as it were, and give them electric heat and generate electricity and create a whole brand new electric power grid. Our original electric power grid was the first early building of it was in the 1890s. Thomas Edison in New York and George Westinghouse. And then Dwight Eisenhower did a major upgrade to our national power grid, as did Franklin Roosevelt. We haven't done anything since then. We are using a 1940s power grid, a 1950s power grid, and it's 2021. It's time to localize it. 20% of our power that we generate is lost because of inefficiencies in the system, what are called line losses and transformer losses. And so we need to be generating electricity with wind and solar and biomass and geothermal, and then using that electricity to drive our cars, to move our trucks, to move our trains, as they are doing in other countries. Norway banned the sale of non-electric vehicles. They've already done it. The United Kingdom is going to do it in 10 years. We can do this.